I have always believed that money doesn't change people. It only reveals who they truly are. I say this as a woman who has lived long enough to see both poverty and wealth, respect and ridicule, and the painful contrast between how people treat you when they think you have nothing and when they believe you own the world. My name is Angela Carter. I'm 63 years old, though most people say I look younger, thanks to a life of good food, comfort and peace of mind. For most of my adult life, I worked my fingers to the bone to build something out of nothing. I wasn't born into money. I earned every dime that now sits in my account. For years, I ran a small catering business that eventually became one of the top luxury catering services in Atlanta. I cooked for governors, celebrities, corporate events, you name it. I raised my only son, Michael, as a single mother after his father passed away when he was just 5. I gave that boy everything, not because I wanted to spoil him, but because I wanted him to have what I never did, a childhood without struggle. Michael grew up to be everything I prayed for. Tall, handsome, responsible, and respectful. He went to college, got his degree in business management, and later joined my company. Eventually, he fell in love with a beautiful young woman named Tasha. At first, I was overjoyed. Tasha was polite, soft-spoken, and carried herself like a lady. She came from a middle-class family, not rich, but comfortable. I had no problem with that. I never believed love should be measured by wealth. But something about her parents, I don't know how to explain it. They were too polished for their income level, too obsessed with appearances. The first time I met them, they greeted me with smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. Her mother especially looked at me like she was trying to measure my worth, not as a person, but as a potential in-law. Her name was Patricia. I'll never forget the way she said, "Oh, you must be Angela," as if she had expected someone else. Someone grander, perhaps. Still, I remained polite. I'm used to people underestimating me. I've been judged for being a black woman in business more times than I can count. But what they didn't know was that behind my modest smile and simple demeanor was a woman worth millions. When Michael and Tasha got married, I spared no expense. I wanted them to have the wedding of their dreams. I paid for everything: venue, catering, decorations, even her gown. I didn't do it for gratitude. I did it because that's what family does. But after the wedding, something changed. Tasha's parents started behaving differently toward me. They hardly called, hardly visited. When they did, they made subtle remarks about how old-fashioned I was or how out of touch I seemed. Patricia once told her daughter right in front of me, "You see, darling, this is why I told you to marry into your class. Some people don't understand sophistication." It took every ounce of restraint in me not to respond. I simply smiled and said, "Sophistication isn't about class, Patricia. It's about character." She didn't like that. Months passed, and my son and his wife began spending more time at her parents' home. I didn't mind at first. Young couples need their space. But deep down, I sensed that Tasha's family was trying to pull my son further away from me. One day, Michael mentioned casually that they were hosting a family dinner. He said, "Mom, Tasha's parents invited us this weekend. You should come too. They really want to see you." I chuckled. "Are you sure about that, Michael? Your mother-in-law doesn't seem to like me very much." He laughed. "Come on, Mom. You're imagining things. Please come. For me." I agreed. But that night, as I lay in bed, something stirred in my heart. I kept thinking about how differently people treat you when they think you have nothing. Patricia and her husband always carried themselves like they were above me, even though I could buy their entire house 3 times over without blinking. So I decided to do something drastic. I wanted to see them, the real them. I wanted to know how they would treat me if I showed up not as Angela Carter, the successful entrepreneur, but as an ordinary old woman with nothing to offer. I wanted to test their hearts. The day of the dinner, I woke up early and went to my wardrobe. Normally, I'd wear a tailored dress, pearls, and light perfume. But that day, I reached for an old faded gown I hadn't worn in years, something I used to wear back when I was still struggling to keep my catering business afloat. I found a pair of worn-out shoes too and tied an old scarf around my head. When I looked in the mirror, I almost didn't recognize myself. My reflection looked like a woman who had seen too many hard days. My skin, unpolished and bare of makeup, made me look older. I took off my gold earrings and left my designer bag behind. Instead, I carried a small nylon purse that had seen better days. As I stepped outside, the driver who usually took me around looked confused. "Ma'am, you're going out like that?" "Yes, James," I said calmly. "Just today. Don't worry, I'll take a cab." He hesitated. "But, James," I cut him off gently. "Trust me, I need to do this." He nodded reluctantly, and I walked down the driveway toward the main gate. The security guard looked at me twice before realizing it was me. I smiled. When I got to Tasha's parents' neighborhood, I noticed the looks. People glanced at me as I walked past, some with pity, others with disdain. I wasn't surprised. Society has a cruel way of assigning worth to people based on how they look. When I finally reached their house, my heart began to race. It was a nice house, not extravagant, but comfortable. I stood at the gate for a moment before ringing the bell. Patricia opened the door. At first, she didn't recognize me, her brows furrowed. "Yes? Can I help you?" "Good evening, ma'am," I said softly. "I'm Angela, Michael's mother." Her expression changed instantly, from confusion to shock and then to something cold and polite. "Oh," she said slowly, "you, look different." "Yes," I said with a gentle smile. "It's been a long day." She stepped aside reluctantly. "Well, come in." As I entered the living room, I saw her husband sitting on the couch, sipping wine. He looked up at me, frowned slightly, and forced a smile. "Angela, how nice to see you." Their daughter Tasha came running in. When she saw me, she froze. "Mom, why do you look like this?" Michael followed her in, grinning. "Mom, what happened? Did you forget your usual outfit?" I smiled faintly. "No, son, I just wanted to be comfortable." Tasha's parents exchanged a look. Patricia muttered something under her breath, like, "Comfortable indeed." Dinner was awkward. Every time I spoke, Patricia's eyes travelled to my worn clothes. Her husband avoided looking at me altogether. When the maid came around serving wine, Patricia whispered, "Don't pour too much for her. She might not be used to this brand." I heard it. I pretended not to. Throughout dinner, I listened to them boast about their connections, their investments, their expensive taste. It was exhausting. At some point, I asked politely, "How's the new business you mentioned the last time?" Patricia laughed. "Oh, we're still working on it. You know, it takes capital, real capital, to start something these days." She looked at me pointedly. "Not everyone has the luxury to play with big money." I smiled calmly. "That's true, but sometimes the people who look like they have the least are the ones who have the most wisdom." She didn't respond. When it was time for dessert, she said, "I hope you don't mind, Angela, but we only prepared enough for the immediate family. You can have some fruit instead." Tasha gasped. "Mom," Patricia waved her off. "It's fine, Angela understands." I did understand, but not in the way she thought. I understood that her kindness was conditional. Her respect was selective. As I chewed my fruit in silence, I realized I didn't need to reveal who I really was. Not yet. Sometimes silence speaks louder than truth. That night, when I returned home, I sat in my room and cried. Not because of their treatment, but because I realized how cruel people can be when they think you're beneath them. The next day, my son called me. "Mom, I'm so sorry for how they treated you. I should have said something." "It's okay, Michael," I said softly. "You saw what you needed to see. That's enough." He was quiet for a while. Then he asked, "You did that on purpose, didn't you?" I smiled through the phone. "Maybe I did." He sighed. "Mom, you're unbelievable." I laughed. "No, son, I'm just a mother who wanted to know the truth." The story didn't end there. What happened a few days later changed everything and left a wound that took me years to heal, because the truth I discovered next was far worse than I imagined. To be continued in part 2. Thank you, my dear viewers, for listening to my story tonight. Life has a way of teaching us who truly deserves a place in our hearts. Never judge a soul by their clothes, because kindness wears no label. If you've enjoyed this story so far, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me in part 2, where everything unravels. Would you like me